So we're diving into the Texas HCS waitlist crisis today.
Okay.
And honestly, it's a tough one, right? We're talking about folks with disabilities waiting years, like over a decade in some cases, for essential services.
It's a long time.
Way too long.
Yeah.
The Home and Community-Based Services Program, HCS, should be a lifeline.
Absolutely, it should be.
It helps people live independently in their communities, not stuck in institutions.
Right, exactly.
But the wait list, it's over 100,000 people long.
It's a huge number, and some of those people, they've been waiting. Some of them up to 15 years.
It's mind-boggling, 15 years.
It's a long time to wait for support that's so crucial.
Especially in a state like Texas, you'd think they'd have more resources.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's not always about the amount of resources. It's about how they're used. And
okay, so how come this is happening then?
it's complicated, like a tangled knot, really.
All right, well, let's try to untangle it.
First off, you've got the population boom in Texas, more people in general, but also more people with disabilities who need these services. It's just demand's growing.
Makes sense. More people, more need, but
But the funding hasn't kept pace.
really? I mean, Texas, they've got money.
True, but when it comes to health and human services, spending per person, Texas, it ranks surprisingly low, historically anyway.
Wow. Didn't realize that.
Yeah, so that's a big part of it. And then on top of that, the system itself, it's got these inefficiencies, like the application process.
Oh, tell me about it. Bureaucratic nightmares, right?
Exactly. Outdated, creates bottlenecks, slows everything down.
So you've got more people needing help, not enough funding, and then this system that's just clunky.
Yeah, and then just to add to the fun, there's the Medicaid unwinding.
Oh, right, that whole thing.
That hit a lot of folks hard nationwide. But Texas, it was especially rough.
What happened exactly? I mean, I know it was about people losing Medicaid, but
Right. So during the pandemic, Medicaid was temporarily expanded, covered more people. But in 2023, they started this unwinding process, reevaluating eligibility.
a lot of people lost coverage.
Millions, yeah. And without that coverage, many lost access to HCS services too.
So they're stuck on this wait list, even more desperate for help.
And here's the kicker. The denial rate in Texas for Medicaid, it was really high, 35%.
35%.
Much higher than the national average. And a lot of those denials were procedural,
Meaning,
paperwork issues, missed deadlines, things like that. Not necessarily because they weren't eligible.
so it's like a double whammy. They lose coverage, and often it's not even because they should have.
Exactly. Adds another layer to this whole crisis.
So we're talking about a perfect storm here. Population growth, underfunding, a system that's not keeping up, and then this Medicaid unwinding that just kicks so many people when they were already down.
And that's the short version.
Man, it's heavy stuff, but it's important, and we'll dig into it more, get into the human cost of all this after a quick break. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers, but like we have to remember these are real people, you know.
Absolutely. Every single one.
Families struggling. I mean, take Maria Gutierrez, for instance. She's a mom, 2 kids with autism.
Right.
Over a decade on the HCS waitlist. Can you imagine?
It's unimaginable, really. The stress, the uncertainty, it wears families down.
I bet. And financially, it's got to be a nightmare.
Oh, absolutely. Constant strain, having to decide between basic needs and the care their loved ones deserve. Impossible choices.
And emotionally. Just draining, I imagine.
Exactly, like running a marathon, but there's no finish line. You just keep going and going. And it's not just the families on the wait list. The whole system feels the pressure.
Right, because it impacts everyone.
Clinics, service providers, caregivers, they're all stretched thin trying to fill the gaps, and it's just not sustainable.
And then there's the kids, like Benjamin, 9 years old, cerebral palsy. He's been waiting 8 years for his standing wheelchair.
It breaks your heart, these delays. They have real consequences.
A wheelchair, that's not a luxury, it's freedom.
Exactly. Independence, being able to participate in life, these are crucial developmental years, and those delays, they add up.
So we've got a perfect storm of issues, lack of funding, bureaucratic mess, people losing coverage. It's overwhelming. But there's got to be a way forward, right?
There is, but there have been some missed opportunities along the way, like the ACA, for example.
The Affordable Care Act.
Right. Medicaid expansion, that was a game changer for a lot of states, brought in billions in federal funding.
But Texas opted out.
They did, and it's a complex issue, politically charged, but by not expanding Medicaid, Texas lost out on an estimated $36.2 billion.
Wow, that's a lot of money that could have gone to HCS.
Exactly. And then there was ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, that offered a temporary boost in Medicaid funding for home and community-based services.
Did Texas get that money at least?
They did, but the impact's been limited, you see. Those funds came with strings attached, reforms that needed to happen. Texas hasn't fully implemented those reforms, so the full potential of that funding, it hasn't been realized.
So some progress, but not enough.
Not nearly enough. We need a systemic overhaul, not just Band-Aid solutions.
We've talked a lot about what's gone wrong. What about some bright spots? Any glimmers of hope in this situation?
Absolutely. Despite the challenges, there's always hope and there are proven solutions. We just need the will to implement them.
Okay, so where do we go from here? What needs to happen to actually fix this?
Well, we've got to start with the funding, right?
Right.
Medicaid expansion under the ACA, that would be a huge step, like we talked about.
Brings in that federal money.
Exactly. But even beyond that, Texas has got to step up, increase state funding for HCS, show that they're serious about this.
Put their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. And it's not just about the amount, it's about how it's used.
Okay, so how do we make sure that money is used well?
We need to streamline the system, that clunky application process. We've got to make it easier for families to navigate.
Less bureaucracy.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the people doing the hard work, the direct support professionals, the DSPs.
They're the ones on the front lines.
They are providing the direct care, the support, but they're often undervalued, underpaid. We need to invest in them.
Better wages, better training.
Absolutely. Make it a desirable career path, attract and retain qualified people, and maybe even offer incentives, loan forgiveness programs, things like that.
Smart. Anything else? We've got the funding, we've got the system running smoothly, we've got the workforce.
Oh, and we can't forget about technology. Telehealth, that's huge, especially in rural areas, expands access to services.
Right, reaches more people.
Exactly. And we're not starting from scratch here. There are models out there that work. Money follows the person, for instance.
What's that?
It helps transition people from institutions back into their communities, better quality of life, more cost effective.
Win.
Exactly. And there are organizations, Disability Rights Texas, they're doing amazing work, advocating for individuals, helping them get the support they need.
Like Gabby, right? You mentioned her earlier.
Yes, she's a great example. Middle schooler, hard of hearing. DRTX helped her get assistive technology, and she went from struggling in school to making straight A's.
Wow, what a turnaround.
It just goes to show what's possible when we invest in the right resources and support.
It's inspiring, it feels like. Despite all the challenges, there's real potential for change here.
Absolutely. This crisis is daunting, but it's not insurmountable. Texas can do this, but it takes action from lawmakers, from organizations, from everyday people.
So what can we do? I mean, as individuals, what can we do to help?
Educate yourselves, spread the word, contact your representatives, support organizations like DRTX. Every little bit helps.
Every voice matters.
Absolutely. This isn't just about numbers on a wait list. These are real people's lives, and they deserve better.
They deserve a chance to live full, independent lives. And hopefully, by shining a light on this issue, we can help make that happen.
I think so. I really do.
Well, I hope you're right. Thanks for breaking all of this down for us.
Of course. Anytime.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Stay informed, stay engaged, and let's work together to make a difference.